Apple gives every single iPad the same battery life rating, but are they really all the same, and how does it actually work for real life use? So we've got all the current iPads here. We've got the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, the 11-inch iPad Pro, the iPad Air 4, the iPad 9, and then the iPad Mini 6. I also have coffee over here, and I'm ready to spend the rest of the day running this test. Now the iPads are fully charged and they're all running Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. I also wrote what I think the results are going to be, and then at the end of this video, we'll see if I was right. This, of course, is not a perfectly controlled experiment, but it's designed to give you an idea of how these iPads compare. I matched the brightness on every iPad. I've got them all set up. I got the timer ready, so let's get started. We're going to be testing YouTube, gaming, rendering videos, recording video, and streaming so we can get a sense of how each iPad performs. I'm super curious to see how the smaller iPad Mini 6 performs against the larger devices, and then whether the 12.9-inch M1 iPad Pro just crushes the rest of them. On the other hand, I'm not sure how the 120 Hz on the two iPad Pro models is going to impact the results, and also how the mini LEDs on the larger Liquid Retina XDR display are going to hold up. Now, the first thing I'm testing is what I definitely do most often on the iPads, which is watch YouTube. Yeah, I know, it's big shocker to you. Now, every iPad is rated for 10 hours of surfing the web on Wi-Fi or watching video, and then 9 hours of surfing the web using cellular data. And in this case, I'm streaming YouTube over Wi-Fi. Now, as we get to about the 30-minute mark, we can see that the iPad 9 is actually leading the pack, followed by the 11-inch iPad Pro, the iPad Mini 6, then the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, and then finally the iPad Air 4. This is a little unexpected. I definitely didn't expect the cheapest iPad to be leading, but let's see what happens as we continue. Next, I wanted to test playing YouTube in full screen. So I quickly created a playlist of a few videos from my favorite creators. And as I'm watching, I think it's interesting to see how well the iPad Mini 6 is doing, and especially how it's doing by comparison to the more expensive and larger iPads. If we're looking at the base prices for Wi-Fi only models, then the iPad 9 sells for $329. The Mini 6 is $499, the Air 4 is $599, then we have the 11-inch iPad Pro for $799, and finally the 12.9-inch iPad Pro for $1099. All right, now it's time to start having fun. So I'm gonna spend the next hour with my first run of gaming, and I don't see a reason why I wouldn't start with some alien shooter. Now, while I was playing this, I thought back to playing Maelstrom on a super old Macintosh. It was like an Asteroid clone, so I'm not really sure what made me think of it, but maybe it was like some sound in the game. Anyway, when it comes to gaming on an iPad, there's a few considerations based on the types of games that you like to play. So the iPad Mini 6 is quickly becoming one of my favorites because it's so small and portable, yet it offers a significantly better gaming experience than playing on my iPhone. On the other hand, if you're looking for a larger display, the iPad 9 is the most affordable, and it's also the only one that comes with a headphone jack. Now, of course, if you're getting one of the other iPads, you can always go wireless, you can use a USB-C headset, or you can get an adapter, but I really like the convenience and the position of the port on the iPad 9. Now, moving on to the iPad Air 4, we're getting speakers on both sides, just like with the iPad Mini 6, so we're still getting stereo sound when playing in landscape mode. Now, of course, it doesn't matter for games like these, but if you're playing games like PUBG, you can much more easily tell where footsteps are coming from. On the iPad 9, you're only getting sound from one side because both speakers are on the bottom. Now, if you want 120 Hz for the fastest refresh rate, quad speakers, and more RAM, then you need to move to the 11-inch iPad Pro. And if you want to game on the largest and best display, then get yourself the 12.9-inch iPad Pro. We can also see that the gap is widening here, the Air 4 is falling behind, and the iPad 9 is now clearly in the lead. Next, I wanted to test out some video rendering. We're now a little over 2 hours into the battery test, and it's time to get into some more demanding tasks and start to push these iPads a little harder. So I took a 1-minute 4K clip of one of my videos, I imported it into iMovie on every iPad, and I rendered it over and over again while changing the length of each render. My goal is to get approximately 20 minutes of video rendering on each iPad so that we can get enough of a sample size of performance and efficiency. Now, the next thing I wanted to test was recording video using the rear-facing cameras. Now, the iPad 9 can only record at up to 1080p at 30 frames per second, so even though though the rest of the iPads can go up to 4K 60, I set them all to 1080p 30 just to keep things fair. And when it comes to the camera systems on iPads, and for that matter, any tablet, I don't overvalue the rear-facing cameras. I'm always gonna have my phone with me, the cameras on my phone are going to be better, and it's also a much more convenient form factor. But the camera is a feature of the iPad, and it's definitely something that drains the battery, so I went ahead and recorded a 25-minute clip. Now, after all this really hard work of recording 5 videos at once, I know it was really impressive, but I feel like I could take a very short break of about an hour and a half of Netflix. And why not take this time and learn more about our planet? This is also a good time to evaluate these displays. So the iPad 9 is the only one to have a non-laminated display, meaning that there is an air gap. The rest of the iPads have fully laminated displays. So the display, the touch layer, and the cover glass are fused into a single display assembly. And the image looks like it's painted right on top of the glass. When I'm watching content, this isn't really something that I would ever notice, especially since the bezels on the iPad 9 are now black for every model. Now, there are some differences in terms of how the Apple Pencil interacts with the iPad, and if you want to learn more about that, I'll link to my iPad buying guide at the end of this video. And there are 2 other factors to consider regarding the display. If you want ProMotion, which is Apple's adaptive refresh rate of up to 120 Hz, then, as I mentioned earlier, you need to get one of the iPad Pro models. For watching content, this isn't really something that I would notice, but when you're scrolling, navigating around the home screen, or opening and closing app, you will notice the faster refresh rate and how it creates a more fluid and responsive user experience. Now, is it enough for me to upgrade from an iPad Air 4 to an 11-inch iPad Pro? For me, if that was the only difference, then probably not. But there are other advantages which could definitely make it a valuable upgrade depending on your needs. Now, the second factor to consider is that the 12.9-inch iPad Pro is the only one with a Liquid Retina XDR display. It has the highest sustained brightness of 1000 nits for HDR content, 1600 nits of peak brightness, and 1,000,000:1 contrast ratio. It's definitely the best display on any iPad, and if you watch a lot of HDR content, you will appreciate having it. After more than 4 hours, I'm super impressed by how well the iPad 9 is doing. It's way ahead of most of the other iPads, and look at the Mini 6 holding its own in 3rd place. Now I feel like it's time for a little more gaming, just to switch it up a bit. So I busted out 1945 Air Force and then a little bit of fun with Tiny Wings, which is a really simple yet oddly addictive game. All right, so now we're 4 hours and 45 minutes into this test. I got myself some more coffee and I'm ready for this last phase where I'm gonna stream YouTube until each iPad runs out of battery. So I got back to my playlist and I can continue watching from where I left off. Now, honestly, I'm pretty surprised at the performance so far. I was thinking that none of them would last 5 hours, especially with recording and rendering video. When I see battery ratings from manufacturers, I know that they're referencing like optimal conditions and fairly light workload. It's also pretty rare for me to go for more than 5 hours of continuous use without a power source. If you're a regular viewer of this channel and you've watched any of my accessory videos, you know that I'm always going to bring a power bank with me when I'm traveling or when I'm out and about, because I just do not like having to worry about battery life. All right, so the iPad Air 4 was the first to go at 5 hours and 17 minutes into this test. It's interesting for me to see this because it's not what I expected based on my actual use, and it's priced right in the middle of the lineup. Now, the next to go is the largest iPad, the 12.9-inch iPad Pro at 5 hours and 51 minutes. I was really expecting this one to last the longest. Sure, it has the largest display, but it also has by far the largest body, and it would make sense that there's plenty of space for a larger battery. At 6 hours and 17 minutes, we see the iPad Mini 6 finally go. If I had to actually bet money, I would have thought that it would run out first, and I'm actually really impressed with how well it performed. And again, look at the iPad 9 still going. Next, when we hit the 6 hours and 38 minute mark, we see the 11-inch iPad Pro run out, and this is 47 minutes longer than the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, which is significant. But I just can't get over the iPad 9, which still has 13% left. That just means that this day isn't gonna end as soon as I expected, but let's get into this final stretch. We're already more than an hour and a half past the iPad Air 4, an hour ahead of the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, and 40 minutes ahead of the Mini 6. So let's just see where we end up. Now, I think these results just add to the overall value of the iPad 9. Like, sure, it doesn't have some of the features of the more expensive models, but As an entry-level iPad, I think it's a great option, especially now that it comes with the A13 Bionic chip and it starts with 64 gigabytes of storage. All right, so finally, after 7 hours and 33 minutes, the iPad 9 battery is dead. And I'm super glad that I didn't bet any money on this result. So let's take a look at what I projected versus what actually happened. I was so wrong, and I'm seriously shocked at how well the iPad 9 performed. My second biggest surprise was the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, which I always feel like lasts forever. It does have the largest and the only Liquid Retina XDR display and the best speakers, so if those are things that you're interested in, there isn't really any other iPad that competes with it. The iPad Mini 6 fared much better than I expected, as did the 11-inch iPad Pro, so I have no complaints there. Even though this is by far the longest video that I'd ever recorded, I'm super glad that I ran this test. And if you're looking for more information about each iPad, check out this complete iPad buying guide. Hopefully this video was helpful. Click on my face to subscribe. You know what I always say, buy it nice or buy it twice. Good luck and see you soon.